A compound complex sentence has two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. This is lesson 13 in the Architecture of Grammar. My name is Léandre Larouche. I'm the author of the Architecture of Grammar and the founder of Trivium Writing. In this video, we're going to cover the compound complex sentence, which is the most complicated type of sentence. And as a disclaimer, this is not a very commonly used sentence in modern English. It is appropriate from time to time to use it, but you should realize that this makes your writing a lot more complex, and it may not be the best depending on who your audience is and what their level of education and reading is. So, as we've seen, there are four types of sentences: simple, complex, compound, and compound complex. So, just to recap, we've seen that simple has one independent. Okay? Simple, one independent. Complex, one dependent, one independent. Now, compound has two independent. Now, the compound complex, it takes from the compound the two independent and it takes the one dependent. So these types of sentences really build on top of one another. So as you can see, simple, one independent, complex, one dependent, one independent, which means one of each. This one only has two independent, and this one has two independent and one dependent. So you can see how that goes, how it builds on top of one another. So looking at the compound complex sentences, again, the big difference between an independent and a dependent clause is there a conjunction? So can the clause stand on its own as a sentence? And so the conjunction makes it a dependent, okay? So here we'll put a who and a what. So that's a dependent. And so then what's going to happen is we'll likely have a comma. Again, we're going to cover all the comma, all the punctuation in the next videos. And we're going to have who, what. So that is an independent. Okay? Dependent, independent. And then we're either going to have a comma with one of the fanboys or a semicolon. If you don't understand what this is, don't worry just yet. As I said, we're going to cover the punctuation and the next videos coming very soon in the series. And then we're going to have again, who and what. So this is another independent clause. So dependent, independent, independent. So here we have two independent and at least one. Now here's the thing. We could also add a dependent here by adding a conjunction and a who and a what. And just to be clear here, I'm putting just who and what. In any sentence, there would be, at most of the time, more blocks. So when, where, why, how, to whom, or how often, etc. But this is just because it takes a lot of place on the whiteboard. And so I'm not putting these, but again, this is what is most important. To have a grammatical sentence, you have a who and a what. So without who and what, you don't have sentences. So that's why I put these. And so here we could have an example. Before he bought the penthouse, Léandre went to New York City and he shopped for penthouses. Now, here I wouldn't have the extra dependent, but this is just to show you that you could add, and this could also, this dependent clause would probably actually make more sense here before, here before the independent. So dependent, independent, dependent, independent, or dependent, independent, independent, dependent. So again, the compound complex sentence, which is the most complicated type of sentence among all, has at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. Now, I said at least two clauses are independent. You most likely won't have more than two clauses. Typically, a sentence has one idea, maybe two ideas, and these independent clauses, they represent one idea. Dependent clauses don't represent an idea because they don't tell the full story, but independent clauses do represent ideas, and so you don't want to have more than two clauses in your sentence. Otherwise, your sentence is going to be extremely complicated and difficult to understand, and your writing is going to be heavier.